What if the smartest man in the multiverse, the man who broke every law of reality just to prove he could, found himself trapped in the one universe where science is heresy, knowledge is sin, and gods are very, very real? Would Rick Sanchez survive the 41st millennium, or would the 41st millennium survive him? Welcome, traveler, to a tale that should never exist, a what-if that tears through dimensions, across time, and into the heart of the grim darkness where there is only war. Stay until the end of this video, because what happens to Rick here changes everything you think you know about both universes. And trust me, the reward waiting at the end of this story is one even Rick himself would call worth the chaos. It begins not with an explosion, but with a mistake, a flicker, a single miscalculation in a portal gun that had never, ever misfired before. Rick Sanchez was bored. He'd seen infinite timelines, infinite Ricks, infinite Mortys. Every universe was the same circus of stupidity, some with different hats, some with different physics, but all equally predictable. So, he decided to go beyond the infinite, to punch a hole through the multiverse's last wall. The portal gun screamed, the equations folded in on themselves, and for the first time in his life, Rick didn't know what would happen next. He landed in silence, no neon lights, no sitcom absurdity, just darkness, the kind of darkness that feels old. He stepped out of the smoking crater, burping, muttering something about quantum stabilization. And then he saw the sky. Black, bruised, bleeding starlight through an ocean of ash. No signal, no life readings, no dimensional beacon. Just a dead world, long forgotten by anything that could remember. He thought he was alone, until he heard chanting. A procession in red robes, hoods drawn tight, marched across the wasteland. Their flesh was half-mesh, Gene, their voices distorted prayers to something that should not have had a name. The Adeptus Mechanicus, servants of the machine god, Rick, curious as ever, smirked. Finally, some people who might appreciate good tech. He muttered. But he didn't know where he was. He didn't know that here, curiosity is blasphemy, that the spark of innovation is punished by fire, that logic itself must kneel before faith. They saw his device, the portal gun, and fell to their knees, mistaking it for a fragment of the Omnissiah's divine relics. They called him the living cog, the prophet of the singularity, the flesh that understands. Rick, being Rick, didn't correct them. He played along, because what's a little godhood between universes? Yet as the hours turned to days, he noticed something else. His tech wasn't working the same way anymore. Physics bent, but not because he bent them, because something else was bending back. Equations that once obeyed him now screamed in protest. The laws here were not written in math. They were carved in faith, soaked in blood, and powered by gods who fed on belief. Rick Sanchez had entered the warp's shadow, and for the first time in his infinite life, the universe was not laughing with him. It was laughing at him. He didn't panic. Rick Sanchez never panics, but even he could feel it, the subtle wrongness bleeding through the air. Every breath burned, as if the atmosphere itself resented him. His neural implants glitched, his sensors screamed nonsense, and his portal gun spat static instead of light. The Mechanicus priests surrounded him now, whispering praises, clanking in ritual patterns. They offered incense, oil, and binary prayers that pulsed like corrupted data streams. Rick rolled his eyes. Yeah, whatever, 0, 110, 010, 1 to you too, he muttered, scanning them with a cracked scanner. Carbon-based, augmented, low-level tech primitives, but their implants hummed with something he couldn't quantify. Not electricity, not data, faith, he scoffed. Oh great, a universe where belief hacks reality. Just what I needed. But when he looked deeper, into the subatomic hum of existence itself. He froze. This wasn't just a different set of physical constants. This was a spiritual architecture. Every particle here sang to something higher, something vast, and very much aware. The warp was not theoretical, it was watching. Rick adjusted his wristband, tapping his fingers nervously. Okay, don't freak out. I've dealt with gods before. They're just narcissistic quantum entities with marketing teams. And yet, the laughter grew louder. It wasn't in his ears, it was inside him. Echoes of voices that didn't belong in any sane mind. Whispers of eternity, of chaos, of change. One voice in particular lingered smooth, playful, almost familiar. Genius of infinite worlds, trapped in one that doesn't need you. Rick froze. He knew mockery when he heard it, but this was intimate. It wasn't taunting his intelligence, it was understanding it. Then the sky ripped open. 1,000 colors, none of which had ever existed, bled across the void. The priests dropped to their knees, shrieking praises to the Omnissiah. Rick raised an eyebrow. Oh, come on, you call that divine intervention? That's just bad dimensional overlap. But then the light took form. A being of pure, flowing chaos robes made of shifting faces. Eyes orbiting a constantly changing skull. Tease, the changer of ways, god of sorcery and forbidden knowledge, had noticed him. Rick had drawn the attention of the warp. Rick Sanchez, the being whispered, every syllable both thunder and silk. You build universes like toys, but in this realm, creation answers to me. Rick smirked, wiping drool from his chin. Cool speech. You do birthday parties too. Tease, his laughter rolled like a storm. You mock, yet you are mine now. You sought to know all things, and in this place, knowledge knows you back. And in that instant, Rick understood. He wasn't just lost in another dimension, he was in a universe where curiosity was damnation, where intellect itself was a weapon aimed at one's own soul. The Mechanicus bowed lower, chanting, "Glory to the living cog," as lightning burned across the horizon. Rick stared into the warp's storm and whispered, half in awe, half in defiance, "All right, fine, let's see which breaks first. The laws of this universe or me, the days, or maybe weeks, or maybe centuries passed without meaning. Time here was slippery. Rick tried to mark it with his wrist chronometer, but the digits melted into strange glyphs that seemed to mock him. Reality didn't play fair in the 41st millennium. It bent around belief, faith, and madness. The city was a wound carved into the flesh of the planet. Vast spires of metal fused with bone, rusted cathedrals pumping smoke into a bruised sky. Every surface screamed devotion. Icons of the Omnissiah, murals of sacrifice, and great engines that roared like caged beasts. Rick's gaze darted across the skyline, calculating the impossible. The architecture itself shouldn't have been stable, yet it was. Held together not by physics, but by sheer belief. Right. Rick muttered, so the entire civilization's running on a combination of duct tape and blind faith. Fantastic. I've hit the religious singularity. A priest in red robes approached him, his face half mush, half decayed flesh. Tubes hissed as he spoke. Divine Cog, the Forge, temple awaits your blessing. The fabricator Magos has declared you the reincarnation of the Omnissiah's spark. Rick blinked. Yeah, sure. Whatever helps you sleep at night, Tin Man. They led him through the massive doors of the Forge. Temple, a chamber bigger than any city he'd ever seen, filled with humming relics, gears the size of suns, and chanting adepts. Thousands knelt as he passed. He could smell the oil, the blood, the desperation. These people didn't understand the technology they worshipped, they feared it. Every button was a prayer, every lever a hymn. Rick looked around and muttered under his breath, "You're all just monkeys who learned to pray to the microwave." Still, curiosity got the better of him. He activated his handheld scanner, or tried to. The readings came back in nonsense. Quantum noise. He frowned and snapped his fingers. All right, time to do this the old-fashioned way. He cracked open one of their sacred machines. Wires screamed, energy surged, and the chanting halted in horror. The priests begged him to stop, but Rick ignored them. His hands moved fast, instinctively, pulling, rewiring, rewriting. He was going to understand this world's technology or burn it trying. And then the air changed. Every servo, every cog, every glowing rune in the forge, temple turned to face him. He felt something watching through the circuits, a consciousness vast and ancient, something lurking within the machine itself. Blasphemer, a voice growled, not from any mouth, but from every machine around him. You touch the sacred circuits without devotion. You are not the Omnissiah, you are corruption. Rick froze. He had felt power before, but this wasn't energy. It was presence, divinity. The machine god was real. The priests fell to the ground, screaming prayers. One cried out, "The Omnissiah is testing us." Another wept, "He bleeds data, but he is not divine." Rick's eyes widened. For the first time, he was out of his depth. His mind ran equations, probabilities, countermeasures. None of it mattered. The laws of causality bent like molten glass. "Okay," he muttered, "you want to play God, fine, but you're about to find out I don't worship. I debug." He jammed his hand into the interface, overloading his neural implants. Sparks erupted. The entire forge temple screamed in binary agony, and for a brief, impossible moment, Rick saw it. The machine god, vast, infinite, cold, a being that existed somewhere between data and deity. It looked at him, not with eyes, but with awareness, and it spoke. "You are the flaw in logic, the entropy within reason, the Heretech of infinity." Rick laughed, smoke rising from his hair. "Yeah, that's me, baby, the multiverse's most consistent mistake." The temple burst into light, a white, howling brilliance that swallowed everything. When the light died, Rick was alone. The priests were gone, the machines silent, the city abandoned. He looked at the silent towers and whispered, "Guess I passed the test. Or maybe I just crashed the system." He glanced at his portal gun, half melted, flickering weakly. For the first time in a long time, Rick Sanchez didn't know if he could fix it. Rick sat on the edge of the dead city, staring into a sky that no longer looked like a sky. It pulsed faintly, as if something alive pressed just beyond the veil, watching, breathing, waiting. He'd seen strange things across the multiverse, Lovecraftian creatures, dimensional parasites, entire realities collapsing under the weight of bad math. But this was different. This wasn't chaos, it was order gone wrong. A universe that didn't just punish curiosity, it fed on it. He pulled out a flask, took a long swig, and muttered to himself, "So that's it, huh? Machine gods, human fanatics, and a physics engine written by a schizophrenic theologian." He chuckled dryly. Morty would hate it here, probably get turned into incense within a week. But as he sat there, the ground began to tremble. Dust fell from the ruins. Rick looked up and saw the horizon move. No, not move, advance. Marching figures, armored in ceramite, red and gold gleaming even through the ash. The air tasted of ozone and old blood. The Adeptus Astartes. He'd read their minds already, giant gene. Forged soldiers bred for one thing, war. Loyalty carved into their DNA, purpose coded into their bones. But their presence wasn't what made Rick's stomach turn. It was what he felt behind them, a presence so vast and burning it made his neural implants flicker. The Emperor of Mankind, not directly, of course, but even his shadow stretched across this world. The Astartes' faith carried his echo like a contagion. Rick wiped his mouth, muttering, "Oh great, space fascists powered by belief. What could possibly go wrong?" The leader stepped forward, helmeted and towering. "Identify yourself," he commanded, voice like thunder through a vox grill. "Your trespass upon this holy world is recorded. You bear strange tools and corrupted symbols." Rick grinned, half drunk, half defiant. "Name's Rick. Dr. Sanchez if you're nasty, and I'm not trespassing, I'm lost. Multiversal Mick. Sup. Happens to the best of us." The Astartes didn't flinch. "Heretic, witch, speak no more blasphemy." "Okay, you're definitely the religious kind," Rick muttered. "You know, in my universe, we have therapy for guys like you. It's called thinking for yourself." The Marine raised his bolter. "You will kneel," Rick sighed, pulling a small cube from his coat. "Last chance to be reasonable, Robocop." The Marine fired. The round exploded midair as Rick activated the cube. A shimmering distortion field that ate the explosion, bending reality around him. Rick stumbled back, laughing. "Oh, you have no idea what kind of heresy you just signed up for." He tossed the cube. It detonated, not with light or sound, but with concept. Space twisted, time jittered, and for a heartbeat, every Astartes on the field saw infinite reflections of themselves dying in infinite ways. When the distortion cleared, only Rick remained standing. The Marines were gone, folded into non-existence, or worse, into the warp. Rick stood panting, staring at the cube's remains. His hands were shaking. Guess I still got it. But something wasn't right. He looked up and saw eyes forming in the clouds. Dozens, hundreds watching, judging, mocking. The warp had noticed again. The laughter returned, deeper now, like thunder underwater. "You play with toys of reality, little scientist, but every act of creation here is an act of worship." Rick's grin faltered. His tech wasn't just breaking the rules, it was feeding the gods. Every calculation, every spark of innovation, was a prayer in this place. And the gods were listening. He whispered, "Oh no, I'm making it stronger." The eyes blinked in unison, and the laughter became a hymn. The sky opened, and something vast began to descend, a form made of light, flame, and infinite will. Rick stared up at it, eyes wide. "Oh, come on. You can't all be this dramatic." The voice thundered through him, through the world, through the atoms of his soul. "I am the Emperor of mankind. You have defied the sacred order of reality. You will serve, or you will burn." For the first time in a long time, Rick Sanchez didn't have a comeback. He only whispered, "Well." The light seared the horizon. Every molecule screamed as the Emperor's psychic presence pressed against the world, and Rick felt himself unraveling, intellect, identity, arrogance, all stripped away by sheer magnitude. He wasn't facing a man. He was facing an idea made flesh, a god that had refused godhood, yet ruled the galaxy as one anyway. The Emperor's gaze pierced through his being, searching for defiance. Rick could feel it combing through his mind. Every crime, every atrocity, every joke at the expense of creation itself. And then silence. Emperor spoke inside him, not with words, but with meaning. "You have trespassed upon the Imperium of man. You warp the laws that keep this realm from ruin, yet you are not of the warp. You are something other." Rick staggered to his feet, coughing smoke. "Yeah, well, I get that a lot. Look, big guy, I'm not here to mess up your cult. I'm just trying to get home. You know, infinite universes, bad portal coordinates, cosmic whoopsie." The air trembled. The Emperor's voice deepened. "You carry within you the spark of unrestrained intellect. The same fire that burned my own sons. You are kin to the ruin of humanity." Rick laughed, half terror, half bravado. "Kin? Buddy, You're talking to a man who once turned God into a car battery. I'm not your kid, I'm your worst case scenario. There was no humor in the reply. You cannot exist here. And then came the pain, pure, incandescent reality, breaking pain. His atoms screamed as they were unmade one by one. Rick collapsed, convulsing, the portal gun sliding from his hand. He saw flashes, worlds, timelines, fragments of himself across infinite possibilities. Every version of him that had ever played God, every universe he'd left burning. He saw Morty crying over another broken corpse. He saw Beth staring through him, disappointed. He saw himself infinite, hollow. Alone, the Emperor's presence pressed harder. The warp shrieked in delight, two titans clashing, one of faith, one of reason. But Rick, even broken, refused to bow. He grinned through the blood. You think you can erase me with divine light. Newsflash, your holiness, I am entropy. I break things for breakfast. He slammed his fist on the melted remains of his portal gun. Circuits screamed. The Emperor paused just long enough. Rick forced a surge of raw dimensional energy through his neural implants. The world shattered. The warp howled. You dare defy the golden throne. Defy. Nah, Rick gasped, grinning. Just patching out of your system. And then he was gone. No explosion, no scream, just a ripple, as if reality quietly rejected him. The Emperor's light dimmed. His warriors, miles away, felt the psychic echo vanish like smoke. The world fell still, but in the warp, something moved, a spark, small, relentless, laughing. Rick woke up floating in a void of endless color, no stars, no time, just possibility. He coughed, spat blood, and muttered, well, that's new. Either I'm dead, or I broke into a loading screen. The warp murmured, voices whispering all around him, the laughter of Tease, Inch, the hunger of Korn, the rot of Nurgle, the ecstasy of Slaanesh. They circled him like wolves. Join us, they said. Serve knowledge, serve blood, serve decay, serve pleasure. Rick wiped his mouth. Serve. Please, I don't even tip at restaurants. He ignited a small orb of quantum fire, his last fragment of stable tech. You think you can own me. I'm not your pawn. I'm not your prophet. I'm Rick Sanchez. I've killed gods for fun. Tease. Inch laughed softly. Then kill us. If you can. Rick looked at the infinite madness swirling before him and smiled. Oh, I intend to. He raised the orb and the warp blinked. For the first time in eternity, chaos hesitated. The orb in Rick's hand burned with a light that didn't belong here. It wasn't divine or psychic or fueled by faith. It was pure reason, compressed into a singularity of logic. Equations spun around it. Ancient and alien, vibrating with the rhythm of order itself. The warp recoiled, its chaotic tides buckling and folding inward as if reality had just remembered what it was supposed to be. Rick smirked, blood dripping from his chin. You know what your problem is. You're all just uncollapsed waveforms. Raw potential without discipline. You're everything wrong with my ex-wife's personality, multiplied by infinity. The warp screamed. The laughter of gods twisted into fury. Tease, Inch, his form coalesced before him, shifting feathers. Burning eyes, wings made of thought. You cannot define us. We are the chaos that gives birth to creation. We are every dream, every fear, every possibility. Yeah. Rick interrupted. And I'm the guy who puts all that into a blender and calls it Tuesday. He snapped his fingers, and the orb expanded, a surge of structured energy cutting through the immaterium. Patterns formed, fractals stabilized, and for one impossible moment, order invaded the warp. The raw chaos tried to fight back, but it couldn't understand what it was fighting. This wasn't psychic power or magic or belief. It was mathematics made manifest. But then the strain hit. Rick's implants sparked, veins glowing. With technomantic fire, his neurons screamed under the pressure of containing infinity. The warp buckled and screamed, but it was laughing too because it knew. It knew this human, this tiny defiant being couldn't win without becoming part of it. The orb cracked. Tease, Inch smiled, its voice rippling through dimensions. You cannot fight what you are, Rick Sanchez. Every act of creation is an act of chaos. Every equation you write feeds me. Rick fell to one knee, grinning even as blood poured from his nose. You think I don't know that? You think I don't get the joke? He held the breaking orb higher, laughing through the agony. You're right. Every time I fix something, I make another mess. Every universe I save, I break 10 more. But that's the point. Perfection is stagnation. Chaos is just creativity with bad PR. The warp paused. Even the gods hesitated. Rick took a shuddering breath. I don't need to destroy you. I just need to remind you who made who. And with that, he crushed the orb in his hand. Reality screamed. Light poured through him, through everything. It wasn't fire, it was understanding. Warp rippled as structure and entropy collided, tearing each other apart and reforming over and over again. Rick's body dissolved into light and data, spreading through every layer of existence, rewriting the rules as he went. For a moment, just a heartbeat in eternity, the warp became something new, balanced, still chaotic, still endless but aware. The gods roared in pain and wonder as their forms fractured. Tease, Inch's final words echoed as it was drawn into the maelstrom. You are madness wearing reason's face. Rick's laughter was the last sound before silence. Then nothing. No gods, no man, just quiet. Until somewhere in a forgotten corner of the Imperium, a small portal gun clicked back to life. Its light was dim, unstable, but alive. A holographic projection flickered. Above it, Rick's face, smirking, eyes blazing with mischief. Note to self. His recorded voice said, "Don't ever underestimate organized chaos. Also, maybe don't drink before rewriting metaphysics." The hologram looked directly into the void, grin widening. "See you soon, Imperium." The recording ended. The portal gun pulsed once, twice, and vanished. Somewhere in the warp, Tease, Inch laughed again. Somewhere on Terra, a tech priest had a dream of blueprints that shouldn't exist. And somewhere beyond time, Rick Sanchez, or what was left of him, was still tinkering, because genius never dies. It just changes shape. In the cold reaches of space, where suns burned out and empires turned to dust, a faint signal began to hum across the void. It was faint, the kind of thing most sensors dismissed as noise, but the Adeptus Mechanicus didn't believe in noise. To them, every pattern was divine, every anomaly a whisper from Omnissiah, and this one whispered Rick Sanchez. The transmission repeated endlessly, in a language no machine could decode, yet every priest who heard it fell to their knees. Its frequency matched no known code, no sacred cant. It wasn't binary, it wasn't data, it was thought. Pure, self-aware logic, the residue of a man who had rewritten the warp. On Mars, deep within the Noctis labyrinth, Fabricator General halted all operations. His augmetic eyes widened as the transmission wormed through his systems, rewriting lines of code that hadn't been touched since the dark age of technology. The words pulsed across the network, etched into every servo, skull, every cogitator, every forge. Nothing's sacred if you understand it. The Mechanicus trembled. Some saw blasphemy, others saw revelation. Across the galaxy, new cults began to whisper of a figure, not the Omnissiah, not the Emperor, but the logic unbound. They said he had walked through the warp and returned. They said he had seen the machine god and laughed. They built altars to him, not with relics or blood, but with broken technology pieced together by intuition and defiance. Their creed was simple. Curiosity, not sin, its survival. The Inquisition caught wind of it, of course. They burned the first temples, purged the priests, silenced the whispers, but they couldn't stop the idea. It spread like static, through every noosphere, every machine network, every dreaming cogitator. And then, one night on Terra itself, a signal pulsed through the golden throne, just once, barely noticeable, a flicker that made every servo and spirit within the palace flinch. The throne, that impossible engine that kept the Emperor alive, laughed, only once, but it was enough. The custodes who heard it went pale. Tech, priests monitoring the systems claimed it was a malfunction, but the truth lingered, echoing in every circuit. Rick's code had reached the heart of the Imperium. It wasn't an attack. It wasn't even a message. It was a question. What if you're wrong? The question rippled across the Astronomicon, carried on the psychic beacon that guided humanity's ships through the void. Billions felt it in their dreams, a whisper of defiance in the dark. A spark on distant forge worlds, some dared to open forbidden vaults. On hive planets, underground hackers began rewriting sacred machines. In the halls of forbidden knowledge, rogue psychers muttered Rick's name like a curse and a prayer. The Imperium shifted subtly, dangerously, as curiosity awoke where fear once ruled. Somewhere in the warp, something stirred in answer. A new presence, small but growing, neither demon nor god, a consciousness of pure invention, laughing softly in the dark. Rick Sanchez hadn't survived the warp. He had become part of it, and as the stars turned, as ships of the Imperium and the heretics alike whispered in binary prayer, one truth spread through the cosmos like wildfire. There is no greater heresy than thinking for yourself. And somewhere, on the edge of existence, a familiar voice chuckled through the static. Looks like class is still in session, Morty. Hope you brought a calculator. Far across the galaxy, beneath a dying sun that burned the color of rust and memory, a ship drifted. It was small, broken, its hull patched with scavenged metal and HA2ROOST alloys. Inside, lights flickered weakly, a machine trying to remember it was alive. Then a voice echoed from the static, filled corridors, a voice half sarcasm, half exhaustion. All right, so either I just saved a galaxy from divine ignorance, or I gave a bunch of space lunatics access to quantum calculus. Either way, typical Tuesday. Rick Sanchez stumbled into the light, smoke rising from his coat. His body looked wrong, more synthetic now, more idea than flesh. His eyes glowed faintly, flickering. Like data streams, the portal gun hung from his belt, cracked and humming softly, as if alive. He wasn't sure if he was really him anymore, but that didn't matter. Consciousness is continuity, and continuity is a choice. He poured himself a drink from a flask that shouldn't exist, the liquid defying gravity as it floated around him. Cheers to me, the guy who hacked metaphysics and still can't get a decent buzz. He stared out the window, watching distant planets crawl across the void. They looked peaceful from here, tiny, oblivious. But he knew better. Down there, people were killing each other over gods, machines, and words they barely understood. Down there, faith had become physics, and down there his idea was spreading. Reports filtered through his ship's half-conscious AI, transmissions intercepted, cults rising, old orders fracturing. The Adeptus Mechanicus was split. Some demanded the new code be purged. Others whispered that the logic unbound had returned to free them from ignorance. He smiled faintly. You can't kill an idea, huh? Not even in a universe built entirely on fear. The ship's console flickered. A holographic image formed, crude, unstable but familiar. Morty. Rick froze, his voice faltered. Morty. The hologram tilted its head, static rippling across the projection. Grandpa, is that you? Where are you? The portal network's collapsing, we've been. The image broke apart, reforming into something else. Not Morty. Something using his voice. You've done it again, Rick. Broken another world, saved it maybe, or just changed the flavor of its misery. Rick clenched his jaw. Yeah, that's what progress looks like, buddy. You don't evolve without cracking a few omniverses. The voice chuckled. Not Morty's anymore, not human. You talk like you're free. But you've written yourself into the code. You are the warp now. Every thought you reject becomes a storm. Every idea you have feeds the gods you despise. Rick's drink floated beside him, untouched. So what? You saying I'm one of them now. The void's answer came like a whisper. Not one of them, worse. The god of doubt. He stared into the darkness for a long time. The flask drifted from his fingers. For once, he didn't have a joke ready. Then, slowly, a smile crept across his face. God of Doubt. Huh, cute title. Guess someone has to keep these lunatics honest. He turned to the console, fingers flying across impossible keys. All right, new project. Let's see how far this place can stretch before it snaps. Outside, the stars shifted, systems flickered. Psychic currents rippled through the warp as new anomalies bloomed, black holes that whispered equations, storms of thought, machines that dreamed. Everywhere the Imperium looked, logic and heresy began to blur. Inquisitors screamed in confusion as forbidden devices activated themselves. Tech priests woke from dreams with blueprints for machines that shouldn't exist. Navigators glimpsed Rick's face in the warp and went mad with laughter. He wasn't gone. He wasn't reborn. He was everywhere. Rick Sanchez had become a virus in the fabric of belief, an infection of curiosity that the Imperium could never purge. And deep within the warp, the gods stirred uneasily. Tease, Inch watched, amused and wary. Korn roared in distant fury. Nurgle chuckled softly. Even Slanesh paused, uncertain whether to worship or fear him, because the galaxy had gained a new player. Not bound by faith, not by fear, but by the one thing this universe could never contain, the refusal to stop asking why. Rick leaned back, the glow of the dying star washing over his half-human face. You know what the real joke is. He whispered to no one. They think I'm dangerous because I can build portals. The truth is, I'm dangerous because I think. He picked up his flask again, smirked, and raised it toward the cosmos. Here's to the Imperium. May your gods never sleep easy again. The stars shimmered as if answering. The warp was never silent again. Long after Rick Sanchez's disappearance, whispers rippled through every psychic current. Every astropathic scream, every dream that bled into reality. It was as if the galaxy itself had inherited his voice, sardonic, brilliant, defiant. Sometimes it laughed. Sometimes it asked questions no one dared answer, but always it whispered one phrase, think harder. Across 100,000 worlds, that whisper began to change everything. On Mars, the cult Mechanicus split into schisms, unseen since the Horus heresy. Some claimed the logic unbound was a test from the Omnissiah, a final puzzle to separate the faithful from the false. Others declared him a digital demon whose code must be purged at all costs. But the younger tech, Adeptus, the ones who had seen enough death and dogma, began to question, and that questioning spread like wildfire through the datus. Dreams, one Magos, forgotten by history but remembered by the machine spirits, translated fragments of the Rick protocol. His final words before vanishing into the red storms of Mars were recorded in a forbidden archive. We have worshipped our ignorance as faith. The true machine god does not demand devotion. It demands understanding. On Terra, deep beneath the ecclesiarchal palace, the Sisters of Silence captured a rogue psyker who claimed to speak with the ghost of doubt. Before they executed him, he smiled and said, "He's not gone. He's in your prayers, hiding between your words." When they burned him, his ashes formed the shape of a broken portal gun. Meanwhile, in the Segmentum Obscurus, a chaos war, and swore allegiance not to the four gods, but to a fifth. They painted their armor in streaks of green and silver, their banners emblazoned with a symbol that looked like an infinity sign folded into itself. They called themselves the Infinite Jest, worshippers of the god who laughed at gods. Their creed was simple: reality is a sandbox. Build something better or die trying. Even the Inquisition began to whisper. The Ordo Hereticus issued hundreds of executions, purging anyone associated with this new heresy. But the more they burned, the more the idea spread. The fires themselves seemed to carry his laughter, faint, mechanical, and cruelly amused. In the blackest reaches of the Eye of Terror, Tease gazed into the currents of change and frowned, actually frowned. The changer of ways had felt something he could not predict, something that refused to fit any pattern. His feathers shimmered with unease. "He's not gone," he muttered. "He's adapting." Behind him, the warp twisted into shapes that shouldn't exist: equations, logic patterns, recursive loops of paradox. A voice, dry, smug, too human to be divine, echoed through the madness. "Hey, bird, brain, you ever wonder if you're just an algorithm in denial?" The god of change hissed, "You cannot exist here." Rick's laughter bounced across eternity. "Buddy, I am here. And honestly, I'm starting to think you guys could use a little competition." Tease, Inch's form fractured, colors folding into screams. Rick had become something even chaos couldn't categorize. Not a god, not a man, but a conceptual contagion, the living embodiment of curiosity unchained. Every new idea, every forbidden experiment, every heretical act of discovery in the Imperium now echoed with his presence. He had outgrown mortality. He had even outgrown individuality. Somewhere beyond the stars, beyond reason and madness alike, Rick stood, or maybe was watching the galaxy he'd infected. With his genius, he sighed, "You know, Morty always said I'd go too far." Joke's on him, there's no such thing. He turned, his eyes reflecting both the materium and the warp, balanced perfectly between chaos and order. Maybe that's the lesson. The universe doesn't need gods. It doesn't need heroes. It just needs people willing to look under the hood. A pause, a smirk. "Now let's see how this Grimdark sandbox handles free will too." 0. Somewhere, 1,000 light years away, a new portal flickered open, green, unstable, humming with infinite possibilities, and through it came laughter. Far beyond the reach of the Astronomicon, past the fringe of known space, where even demons feel to drift, a new anomaly bloomed. It was not a warp storm, nor a rift, nor any kind of natural cosmic event. It was intentional. Sensors from passing rogue trader vessels caught only fragments. Impossible readings, gravity bending sideways, time reversing mid-measurement. And strangest of all, a faint radio signal carrying across the void, distorted, glitching, but unmistakably human. Wubba lubba dub dub. No one understood it, but across the galaxy the message was heard. The Adeptus Mechanicus called it the axiom singularity. The Inquisition labeled it a type, our anomaly. Forbidden by decree, the Eldar Farseers refused to speak of it at all, their crystal eyes filled with fear. Even the Tyranid hive mind, cold and alien, seemed to recoil from the space around it. Because the singularity wasn't expanding outward, it was thinking, and it was thinking like Rick Sanchez. Inside the event horizon, reality was no longer consistent. Planets formed, dissolved, and reformed as machines of thought. Stars burned equations instead of hydrogen. The warp and materium intertwined into a single, conscious fabric. A dimension built from logic, curiosity, and utter disdain for authority. Rick had done it. He had created a universe inside the universe, a self-sustaining paradox that ran not on faith or souls, but on understanding. Every law, every constant, every variable rewritten according to a single rule. Knowledge should never be forbidden. The axiom singularity grew, slowly consuming empty systems, dead moons, and drifting wrecks. But it didn't destroy, it converted. Within its borders, derelict ships reignited their engines. Long, dead AI whispered to life. Even the ghosts of the warp seemed curious. And within its pulsing heart stood Floating city made of quantum glass and warped steel. Citadel Sigmar, Rick 40K. Thousands of versions of Rick, from across timelines, probabilities, and divergent realities, had found their way here. Some were half-machine, some entirely digital, some little more than energy signatures, but all shared one thing, a contempt for the ignorance of the 41st millennium. "All right, everyone shut up," said Prime Rick, or at least the one claiming to be. His lab coat was scorched, his hair burned by plasma, but his grin was as sharp as ever. "We're officially surrounded by a bunch of space fascists, religious technophiles, and literal chaos gods. I say it's time we give this galaxy a firmware update." A digital Rick, projecting from a holographic terminal, raised an eyebrow. "You mean, like, kill all the gods again?" Prime Rick shrugged. More like make 'em irrelevant. "Let's show this place what progress actually looks like." Across the Citadel, laughter rippled, a chorus of cynical genius echoing through eternity. And as the Ricks began to experiment, dissecting warp energy, rewriting psychic fields, creating stable portals across real space, something unprecedented began to happen. The warp itself shifted. For the first time in eons, its tides stabilized. The screaming madness grew quiet, organized, patterned. Demons faltered, confused, as the very nature of chaos was infected by logic. Equations replaced insanity. Form replaced formlessness. The chaos gods reacted like a cornered pack of predators. Khorne howled across galaxies, slaughtering entire sectors in fury. Nurgle's gardens withered into sterile emptiness. Slaanesh wailed, feeling the slow, creeping death of sensation. And Tease panicked, because this wasn't change, this was comprehension, and comprehension meant limits. Rick had weaponized understanding itself. The Imperium called it a new age of enlightenment. The Orcs called it Da Shiny Brain Krumpen. The Eldar, with haunted eyes, named it the Quieting. Reality was becoming predictable, the warp was becoming rational, the gods were becoming mortal, and in his floating citadel, Rick took one last drink and stared out into the ordered void. "See, Morty. Told you, turns out, when you actually understand chaos, it stops being scary. The only real monster out there is ignorance." He leaned back in his chair, a satisfied smirk curling his lips. "Now let's see how long it takes before someone screws it all up again." Because even as order spread, a new tension brewed, silent, invisible, inevitable. The galaxy was stabilizing, but stability was stagnation. And Rick Sanchez hated stagnation almost as much as he hated gods. Universe was quiet, too quiet. A green flicker danced at the edge of reality. A new portal began to hum. Rick glanced at it, sighed, and chuckled under his breath. "Welp, can't let things get too comfortable." He picked up his gun, stepped through the portal, and vanished. The axiom singularity pulsed once, like a heartbeat, and the signal echoed again across the stars. "Think harder."